Hi there, I have a question for you. You've almost certainly encountered enemies in games, but just hear me out on this one. What if the environment itself could be seen as an enemy? Okay, I know what you're thinking. There's no way. It's not even alive. And of course, that would be a very valid argument. But what if I told you there's more to it? Today, I'd like to take a look at one of my favorite games to discuss this idea, Infra. It's a game we've talked about before on this channel. If you'd like, you can find a link to my review in the description. But right now, let's talk. Can a game's environment be an enemy? Let's find out. To keep it short, for those who don't know, Infra is a first-person adventure game where you won't find zombies, hostile soldiers, or even a single alien threat lurking in the shadows. Instead, you'll be up against something far more formidable, the decaying infrastructure of a forgotten city which constantly gets in your way on your journey to save the city. But does that make it your enemy? Well, before we can decide if the environment in Infra is actually an adversary, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, what is an enemy in the first place? Normally in most games, the enemy is some aggressive entity, some person, monster, robot, or whatever that tries, either actively or passively, to hurt, stop, or otherwise get in your way. Think of the dictionary definition: a person or thing who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. When we hear the word enemy, we usually imagine something with a mind of its own. In shooters, that's the swarm of soldiers trying to put a hole in your face. In stealth games, it's the guard who hunts you down the moment you slip up. In a platformer, it's the little enemy that moves along a set path, waiting for you to make a mistake. There's typically this idea of intent behind an enemy's actions, a will to oppose us. But in a broader sense, an enemy can also be anything that poses a significant threat or stands in the way of our goals. It doesn't necessarily need to hate or plot against you, it just needs to create real conflict that stops you from getting where you want to go. So, does that require conscious maliciousness? Maybe, maybe not. Some would say that an enemy has to be actively hostile, like those soldiers or guards we mentioned. Others take a looser view. If it's capable of harming you or preventing your success, it's effectively an enemy. In many games, that role is filled by monsters and boss fights. But in Infra, it's a bit different. The biggest source of danger you'll face is, well, everything around you. Collapsing tunnels, unstable walkways, rumbling dams. These hazards seem to want to put an end to you, even though rationally, we understand they're inanimate. So I ask you, does something have to be out for your soul to count as an enemy? Or can it simply be in the way with enough power to stop you dead in your tracks? That distinction is key, and it's exactly what we'll talk about right now to see how Infra's environment stacks up against the definitions of an enemy and why it might be time to rethink what hostile territory really means. Let's begin by looking at all the evidence that points to Infra's environment fitting the bill of an enemy. Constant threats and hazards. Infra's world is brimming with hazards due to improper maintenance, collapsing hallways, leaking gas pipes, weakened catwalks, and plenty of electrical danger. Though, unlike a typical video game foe that announces itself with snarls or bullets, these threats are silent and ever-present. You're not sure when a floor might suddenly cave in beneath your feet, or when a runaway train might come your way without any warning. It's important to note that you can't predict every deadly structural failure. That unpredictability mimics the tension of fighting a hidden enemy, and even when there's no immediate collapse, you feel the looming possibility of one, which can keep your heart racing as effectively as any enemy ambush. In other words, it's the kind of danger that hovers over you every move, much like a sniper hidden in the distance, except here, a sniper is a crumbling ceiling or a rusted pipe ready to burst, a direct obstacle to your goals. Think about a game like Portal. You might not face an army of robots, but GLaDOS, an AI with malicious intent, is constantly throwing obstacles in your path. In Infra, the environment itself plays that obstructive role. You're trying to fix and document a city's failing infrastructure, but the decaying buildings are actively stopping you from achieving those goals. Even when you're not in danger, doors are jammed shut, hallways have collapsed, debris is piled so high you can't pass without finding a workaround. You'll often need to manipulate your surroundings to progress, whether that's reactivating a pump house or rigging electrical systems to function again. In many ways, you're forced to fight the environment just to complete your objectives, repairing what you can, charting safe routes, and sometimes risking your safety to push forward. It's an ongoing wrestling match with your surroundings, and it feels a lot like wrestling with a tough adversary. Psychological warfare. An enemy doesn't just hurt you physically, it can also tear you down mentally. Infra excels at creating a sense of unease. Even when you're in a quiet corridor, the environment's track record for random collapses keeps you on edge. The horror-esque sound and level design certainly don't help things at all. You're constantly wary of the next catastrophic failure or something else, which creates a low-level anxiety throughout the experience. Traditional enemy encounters can spur a rush of adrenaline during fights. In Infra, you're mostly left alone, left with only your stress and the ominous groaning of old building materials. There's a psychological weight to that silence. This anticipation, not knowing if the roof is going to hold, or if the next area has breathable air, acts much like a hidden enemy in the dark. It's an ever-present dread, which can be just as stressful as facing off against a flesh and blood opponent. It actively fights back. Now, actively fights back might sound odd when we're talking about bricks and steel beams, right? But hear me out. As you progress, each new area introduces more advanced forms of environmental resistance, massive structural flaws, precarious machinery, and labyrinthine corridors that you have to painstakingly navigate or restore to working order. Early in the game, you mostly deal with easily avoidable danger. Certainly, nobody is forcing you at gunpoint to do something as reckless as throwing bricks at dams, but it doesn't take long before you find yourself in situations where entire zones might be on the verge of collapsing, forcing you to scramble for solutions under intense time pressure. It feels like every time you fix one issue, another arises, almost as though the environment is retaliating. While it's not truly sentient, the effect is the same. You and the environment are locked in a back-and-forth struggle, with your life and the city's fate hanging in the balance. The role of conflict in storytelling. From a storytelling standpoint, an enemy is anything that creates conflict. It challenges the protagonist's goals and shapes the narrative stakes. In Infra, that conflict is the city's crumbling infrastructure, which stands between you and a safer future for its inhabitants. The environment isn't just a setting, it's an active narrative force that drives the story forward. Without the environment threatening to collapse at every turn, you'd have no reason to explore deeper, fix problems, or document damages. The city's decay essentially becomes the main antagonist of the story, fueling your motivation to investigate, repair, and uncover the corruption that led to this state of disrepair in the first place. It's as much an enemy to your mission as any supervillain or rogue AI might be in another game. So, given all these factors, the constant threat of harm, the direct obstruction of your goals, the psychological toll, the reactive nature of hazards, and the driving conflict from the story, it's not too much of a stretch to say the environment in Infra behaves a whole lot like a traditional enemy. It might not have eyes, a beating heart, or any ill will against the player, but in terms of raw danger and conflict, it fits the definition pretty well. Now, we've just seen plenty of evidence suggesting that Infra's world can feel like an adversary, but not everyone sees it that way. For some players, calling the environment an enemy in Infra misses the mark, and here's why that might be. No malicious intent. When we think of an enemy, we picture a conscious force, something or someone actively working against us. But bridges don't collapse out of spite, and toxic leaks aren't planned assaults. In Infra, the crumbling city infrastructure isn't deciding to attack you, it's simply falling apart. Years of neglect, corruption, and wear and tear have left the environment inherently dangerous, but it's not evil. There's no master plan. The environment doesn't hate you. It's just in poor condition. That lack of malice matters when defying an enemy. Sure, it can kill you, but so can gravity if you trip off a ledge. No one really calls gravity their enemy, right? It's more puzzle than battlefield. In many segments of Infra, you aren't fighting your surroundings. You're investigating them, documenting faults, taking photos of structural issues, and finding ways to restore functionality. By repairing machinery or rerouting power, you're working with the environment to make it safer, not trying to destroy it. The environment is often an obstacle course of puzzles rather than a confrontation. Think of it like solving a Rubik's Cube. Challenging, but not actively trying to defeat you. This is fundamentally different from the typical enemy encounter, because you're engaged in a process of discovery and restoration rather than outright battle. The environment is a victim too. Infra's story is all about corruption, mismanagement, and the slow decay of a city's infrastructure. In this sense, the environment is almost a casualty of a broken system, rather than the villain of the story. The hazards you face are consequences of human failure, neglected maintenance, corporate greed, and lack of oversight. The city's crumbling state impacts everyone who lives there. It's not just harmful to you as a player character, it's a dire predicament for its residents. Seeing the environment as an enemy could overshadow the game's deeper commentary on the real-world ramifications of infrastructure decay. The city isn't your foe, it needs saving. Lack of direct conflict. Most games that feature an enemy revolve around direct conflict. You know the exact moment you're in a fight, and there's a win-lose outcome. Either you defeat the enemy, or it defeats you. Infra's game loop is subtler. There is no way to fight back against a broken bridge or a toxic moldy wall. Your main challenge is staying alive and navigating, not overpowering or outsmarting a living foe. This creates a feeling of tension, sure, but it's not the same conflict dynamic you would get from facing off against an armed guard or a boss creature. You're dodging danger and repairing systems, not locking horns with a hostile adversary. It's part of the setting, not the antagonist. Narratively, many games feature the environment as a backdrop, sometimes interactive, often dangerous. However, labeling that environment as the enemy can be misleading if the central conflict revolves around human corruption and negligence, rather than the environment itself. Infra's real antagonist could be said to be the people in charge who allowed the city to fall into disrepair, or the bureaucratic red tape that prevents meaningful solutions. The environment is just where those failures play out, not necessarily the cause of them. In this interpretation, the environment is simply a symptom of a deeper, more human-driven issue. So, while Infra's world can feel hostile and even dangerous enough to be called an adversary, it lacks the malice, self-awareness, and confrontation we usually associate with the word enemy. Instead, it might be better understood as a formidable challenge, or the unwitting casualty of neglect. And now, we'll take a look at the gray area between these two interpretations, where the line between environment as a puzzle and environment as an enemy starts to blur. We've just discussed reasons why Infra's environment could be considered your enemy, and why, at the same time, it might not be. But in a complex game world like this, the truth often falls somewhere in between. Let's talk about the gray area, where the lines blur and the environment doesn't fit neatly into a single box. Hostility without agency. Infra's world can surely feel hostile. It's full of perils, collapses, floods, everything short of a literal monster jumping out at you. These dangers can kill you, just like an enemy would, yet they come with zero conscious thought or intent. You are faced with obstacles, but they don't choose to be obstacles. The environment isn't out to get you, even though it certainly can if you're not careful. From a mechanical standpoint, the decaying city is your main opposition. From a philosophical standpoint, it's just the tragic result of neglect. It's hostile in its effect on your journey, yet it isn't actively plotting your demise. Adversary by design, but not by intent. The developers deliberately designed Infra's environment to challenge and endanger you. In that sense, it serves the role of an adversary within the game's structure. Every failing piece of equipment is meticulously placed to provide tension and keep you engaged. If story and context matter most, you might see the environment as a victim. For some, anything that can kill the protagonist is an enemy. For others, an enemy must have intent. In Infra, the environment is a little bit of both, or neither, depending on how you look at it. Emotional realism versus game mechanics. In a more emotional sense, you might feel under attack when things crumble around you. This feeling can mirror the anxiety and adrenaline you'd get from a more conventional enemy encounter. Collapsing structures can certainly give you the same jolts of alarm you might get if an enemy fired a gun at you. You're on edge, in survival mode, exactly like you'd be if you were dodging an enemy's attack. However, once you step back from the adrenaline rush, you realize there's no singular evil force orchestrating it all. So, on an emotional level, it can feel like an enemy encounter, while logically, it's just physics and deteriorating architecture. The narrative's real villain. While the environment might act as your foe in gameplay terms, the story of Infra points to human corruption, negligence, and incompetence as the real culprits. So if we're looking for an actual villain, it's arguably the system, or the people behind the system, who caused this disrepair. The environment becomes the stage where these systemic failures play out, and you're the one dealing with the repercussions. On the surface, you wrestle with crumbling concrete. Deeper down, though, you grapple with a network of political, corporate, and societal failings. This tension between the environment as an obstacle and the people who allowed it to crumble muddies the water even more. Who's the true antagonist? The environment itself, or the forces behind its sorry state? Perspective matters. Ultimately, whether you view Infra's environment as an enemy hinges on your perspective as a player, or even as a critic. If you're all about gameplay mechanics and immediate threats, you might see the environment as the stand-in for an antagonist. But if the story and context matter most, you might see the environment as a victim, an outcome of the corruption plaguing the city, as mentioned before. So, after all this discussion, where do we land? Is Infra's environment truly an enemy, a neutral setting, or something in between? Here's what we can say. The game's atmosphere is designed to make you feel under threat. The decay can be as nerve-wracking as any combat encounter. You'll spend much of your time wrestling with and occasionally losing to these hazards. If that tension alone qualifies something as an enemy, then yes, the environment is most definitely your foe. However, the story is also a reminder that everything crumbling around you is really the result of human neglect, greed, and incompetence. The environment is not evil. It's simply a stage where years of mismanagement have come to roost. If you see enemies as mustache-twirling villains or bloodthirsty creatures, the environment doesn't really measure up. It has no consciousness, no vendetta, it's just dangerous. So in a sense, Infra allows us to see how the environment can function like an enemy in gameplay terms, while remaining a victim or symptom in narrative terms. Whether you end up seeing Infra's environment as the big bad or not, one thing's certain, it's a powerful force in the game. And maybe That's the real takeaway. An enemy, in the broadest sense, doesn't have to carry a gun or bare its teeth to stop you. Sometimes, time, gravity, and a crumbling world are more than enough to keep you on your toes. Thanks for accompanying me today. If you found this video insightful, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're really feeling generous, be sure to subscribe. Until next time, stay curious and watch your step. It's a fragile world.